Listen-only mode.
Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to today's webinar, all about reducing call volumes or call avoidance. We'll be discussing ways that you can achieve this and the benefits for you and your team and to the customer as well, and some of the tips for making this all work in practice in a real environment. And joining me today is our guest presenter, Jim Higham, he's IT Service Desk Manager at the University of Kent, and they actually do this particularly well. And so Jim's going to be sharing some of their sort of tips and tricks. Hi Jim, thanks for joining us.
Hi Zoe, hello everybody. Thank you very much for joining me today.
Brilliant. So you're going to present some slides for us in a second, and then we'll take some listeners' questions at the end, if that's okay with you.
That sounds brilliant.
Excellent. Okay, well, so how are things going at the University of Kent at the moment?
We're entering our summer period. We've just had end of term, but my team are quite busy helping staff, so you may hear a little bit of noise in the background from time to time, but hopefully my voice will carry over the top of that.
Yep, excellent, fantastic. Okay, well, let's get started then. Over to you, Jim.
Okay, right. Well, a quick summary of the things that I plan to say today. I'm going to say a bit about University of Kent. I'm going to say a little bit about me, and then get into the meat of things. Why call avoidance is good, how we try to do it at Kent, and why embedding it as a culture in your team, the whole IT team, not just the service desk, why that's key to making it work. It's like everything. Everybody needs to be singing from the same hymn sheet and doing the same thing, working to the same goals. Okay, University of Kent. That's where I've worked for an awful long time, about 38 years now, I think. We're a top 20 university according to many of the surveys. We've got about 20,000 students, 3,500, 3,000 to 4,000 staff. It varies. We've got a lot of part-timers. We have a main campus at Canterbury, a very beautiful garden campus. We also have a fairly substantial shared campus at Medway in Chatham, at the historic dockyard. That too is a lovely campus. We share that with Greenwich and Christchurch universities. We have a smaller campus at Brussels, but a very important campus to us. And we also have teaching centres at various places, including Tunbridge in Kent, Paris, Athens and Rome. And we have a very good reputation and very good ratings for teaching and research. So a little bit about me. I started here when, probably before many of you even knew about IT and computers. We had punch cards and paper tape in those days. I've been help desk manager for about the last 16 years, and I used to be in charge of a number of frontline services, including a student support desk, which is a merged service. It serves both library and IT. I'm now focusing just on the staff side of things, but we still get involved with students quite considerably. We have significant relationships, obviously, with our technicians, our operations team, our publishing team, our training team, as long with all the development teams and everybody else throughout the university, of course. But those are the key people. My department is Information Services, and that's a combination of IT and library provision for the university. So we provide all the central information resources and the tools and mechanisms, the technology to access all of that, including websites, email, etc. So, what are we talking about today? Trying to reduce the number of tickets, the number of phone calls, try and improve things. So, why is that a good thing? Some service desks, I've heard, they're very proud of the fact that they've got lots of tickets coming in, lots of phone calls, and they boast that the call number is going up and up and up. Now, If you're a sales desk, that sort of makes sense because the number of sales you're getting, you're bringing in revenue to your business, so you're making more money. But we're not a sales organisation, we're an IT support organisation, and from my point of view, I think reducing ticket count is what actually matters, and I'll come on to a little bit more detail on that in a moment. So, why do you want to drive down the number of tickets? The business wants to get on with what the business wants to do. In the university's case, that's doing teaching and research. Nobody actually wants to contact us, they just want to get on there with their business. So the more we can do that and enable the business to work without us having to be there, the better it is for everybody. Service desks never used to even exist. When I started, we didn't have a service desk. We just had a bunch of computers that people used, and that worked fine. Reducing call volume is good so people can get on with their work, and we need to work with everybody in the IT team to try and make that happen. So what are the practical ways you can reduce call volume? Well, you can reduce incidents. ITIL is very good on that. The problem management structure within, process within ITIL gives you a very concrete way of linking a number of incidents to a problem ticket, making sure that's investigated, and you get rid of any workarounds, solve the root cause, and then in theory, your number of incidents go down. There's also another number of other things you can do to that too. When you bring in new services, you can make sure that those new services don't require any interaction with service desk. A lot of developers still say, oh, for that bit, we'll just get them to contact service desk. And I always have to leap in there and say, no, that's not the right way to go. How can we do it so they don't have to, so they can just get on and do their own thing? Okay, so how do we do all these things? Well, we've got to change the culture. We've got to get everybody thinking exactly the same thing. That everything we do is about reducing call volume. Now, that's very easy to understand. It's quite hard to do in practice, and you need to keep banging on about it all the time. So, a few other things. Self-service is obvious. One of the things we do at Kent is we record every now and again. You do a review of FAQs. So you may have something in your IT service management tool already, your help desk tool, which has a list of FAQs that your agents do. So there's a good start. I like to ask the agents from time to time what it is that bugs them. Produce a list of your top 10 irritations, things that keep coming in regularly that you think we could get rid of, or even just the things that you get regularly. And then you can have a look at them. Okay, so service desk staff are definitely the best people to ask, and what's the incentive to them? Because to some extent you may think, well, okay, they're worried about losing their job if we get rid of all the tickets. Well, there's always other things we can do, and we'll come on to being a proactive service desk in a little bit. As far as most service desk staff are concerned, they're quite happy to have fewer calls anyway. So by reviewing and documenting and improving our ability to respond to FAQs without customers having to contact us means that they get fewer calls. So if that's clear to them, and you can help explain this whole process to them, they have an incentive to do that and help you do that. So once you've got your list of FAQs and you've gone through it, you work out what to do with it, each one. Work out which is the priority and which ones you can actually do something. So you might cherry pick a few that you think there's a few quick wins, or if we document that and circulate and push out to our customers more, that will reduce the amount of call. Some require a bit more creative thinking, and you have to work with a number of people to try and come up with concrete solutions to do it. But that's fun. That's actually quite an enjoyable process. It's much more challenging than just routinely answering queries which you've done the same as yesterday, the same as the day before. So hopefully for your staff who are involved in this process, it engages them, it makes the whole job more interesting. Once you've got through the easy, quick wins, you have to move on to the harder things, things that cost money, take development time, take significant amount of resources. These are the bigger challenges, but they're probably the ones that are even more worth doing. So how do you go about that? Well, I found over the years that our business case structure helps considerably. We have a business case template which allows you to show what change you wish to make, why you want to make it, and crucially, what the business value is, how much return on investment you're going to get. You can then demonstrate that the amount of effort you're going to put in, the development resource, the cash that you need, and the time from your developers and anybody else involved, is outweighed by the value to the business that you get. And you can do that in quite a number of ways. Sometimes it's going to be that just the number of calls is going to go down, and you can probably put a value on the cost to your call centre of that number of calls. But that's not the whole story. It's not just the saving from your team, it's also the saving of the business, and that's probably more important. Staff who have to call up for one of these FAQs have interrupted whatever they're doing to make that call, and whatever the incident or issue is, that's also probably interrupted and slowed down whatever they're doing. If you can quantify what that is and put a real value on that in terms of money and lost revenue, that's going to help considerably with your business case. And I think that's where the core value comes in. It's not just reducing for service desk, it's helping the entire business. I hope that makes some sort of sense. So, how do we go about this? Well, ask yourself one question and get your team to keep repeatedly asking the same question. How could we have avoided the need for the customer to contact us? Because the problem is customers don't actually want to contact service desk. Service desks love to think that customers enjoy contacting us, but if I'm honest and ask somebody, or even ask myself, do I want to contact service desk today? Well, actually, no. I'd rather get on with my work and do something more useful. It gets in the way if I have to contact service desk. So they want that to be avoided. We want that to be avoided. And a different way of putting it, how can we make ourselves redundant? We never will, of course. But that's the ultimate aim, is something that doesn't require us at all. We used to have a process at Kent in the very early days. We introduced a wireless service, and people had to sign up for it. They had to fill in a form, and eventually that would come as a ticket automatically through to my desk, and one of my team would have to manually add them to an Active Directory group to give them access to wireless once they check their credentials, make sure they're the right sort of person to have access or whatever. And today, of course, that looks like a completely ludicrous thing to do. Wi-Fi has to be available for everybody all the time. But in those days, that made sense. Today, that's crazy. We then introduced a virtual private network, a VPN service, and we did pretty much the same for that. It took, again, a business case to make the change, to say, no, let's give that as a default to everybody, and let's not worry quite so much about the security, but never forgetting security is important. Authorization, access to folders, files, SharePoint, you name it, printers. Quite often, people set up processes where in order to get that access that you need, you have to come to service desk. Can you do that without? Can you set up something where people can self-service. They can put in the request. I mean, for example, on SharePoint, it gives you a nice little facility so that somebody clicks a button saying, I would like access to this particular location on SharePoint, and it will send a message off to the owners of that particular area on SharePoint, and those people themselves can make the judgment and give the access. No need for service desk involved. Nice and seamless. Okay, I think I've said already that Service Desk needs to be part of new developments so that you can make sure that the service is very customer-centric in a real way, so that customers can just get on with their work without contacting us. And I think we've been quite successful at Kent doing that. It's slowly embedding as a part of our culture to do that. Okay, so hopefully you get the message that customers really don't want to contact us. So we plod on with our FAQs, and Service Desk is very happy, and often we find frontliners, service deskers answering the calls, they actually enjoy FAQs. Why do they enjoy FAQs? Well, they're quite easy, and the customer's very grateful. They get an instant answer. We know what to do. They're very happy. We're happy because it's nice and easy. But actually, it's not the way forward, isn't it? We really want to get rid of FAQs. Everybody's not happy because the business isn't happy. The business is being interrupted by every single FAQ. Your service desk is being interrupted by every single FAQ. So let's see what we can do to get an easier life for everybody, the business and for the service desk. As well as getting a list of FAQs, you can probably get a list from your IT service management tool, your help desk tool, and that can help you judge the impact of that. Every year when you review FAQs, I like to see a change in the FAQs. That top 10 should look different. If you've been successful, you've eliminated some and you've got different ones. When you've done it for a few years, it tends to get harder though. The ones that are more difficult take a lot longer. But those are the ones that should challenge you, and you start saying, well, okay, let's do a business case. Those have been there a year or two. We haven't managed to get rid of them. What can we do to get rid of them? Let's make a business case. Let's see if we can throw some money at it, throw some real resource at it. Occasionally that won't work, and you have to pragmatically say, well, okay, the cost of getting rid of this particular FAQ is going to be too expensive. It really is cheaper to the business to use the service desk. There are a few cases where that happens. So that will keep you in business, and that's good. But being proactive is where you really want to be. Looking out all the time, working with the developers to try and eliminate problems before they even happen.
I'd like to find out what account you're using your staff account.
So, why are we here? Why have we got a service desk? Well, primary role is to keep the business working. Remove barriers, fix problems, let the business do what the business wants to do, and that's work and be productive. As well as fixing problems, we can try and anticipate problems and try and design systems which reduce the likelihood of a system interruption, an incident arising. How do we do that? We talked about designing new systems so that they don't need customer interaction. We also need to design resilient systems. So how do we design resilient systems? Well, your operations and development team probably do this automatically already, and we probably take it for granted too, for a great extent, but some areas may not be the case. So let's look at a small amount of the detail there. A typical example from the University of Kent, quite a good few years ago, we made a considerable investment in a generator. We already had uninterruptible power supplies, UPSs in our machine room, keeping the machines going if there was a small glitch in the power But if we had a power cut, the power went and all the machines went off, and it was a massive operation to get it back again when the power came up. So we eventually managed to make the business case to get a generator, and that's absolutely wonderful. Keeps it going throughout a power cut, and as soon as people regain power to their desks, they can carry on working. If they're away from the power cut, all our services are still connected to the network, and they can still use them. So most people away from campus don't even know we've got campus power cut. A lot of the kit in our data center has multiple redundancy. It has multiple redundant power supplies, disks, you name it. So if a disk or power supply fails, the whole thing carries on. There is a risk there though. If you don't monitor that redundancy and you just allow it to fail and only check it occasionally, you can get in a situation where more than one power supply, more than one disk fails on the same system, and your redundancy, it no longer carries you through. So you have to monitor it and get on it and fix each individual case. Our customers expect us to be doing this. You expect the power, the lighting, heating, you name it, the phones, you expect them all to just keep going. And the same with IT these days. Our customers expect it all to be seamless and just to happen. And there's plenty of technologies to help you do that. You just need to make sure you're on top of it. So, challenges, always challenges. Keep improving, keeping changing for the better, keeping up with technology. Technology often improves and helps us do a lot of these things. One of the things you can do with monitoring, we use Nagios at Kent to monitor all our systems as well as a few other things. If you have a good monitoring system, this can make sure that you're aware of issues, sometimes before even the customers are aware of it. We make sure our service desk comes in at 8 o'clock, which is before most people come in at the university. So we look out for any reports and any monitoring of issues that have happened overnight and make sure they're sorted and things brought back up and running before 9 o'clock usually. So that's before most people arrive. So most people aren't aware of the issues. And the timing of this will depend on your particular industry, your particular criticality. You may be lucky and have people working overnight so that they can keep on top of the monitoring and keep things fixed. Being ahead of the game is really useful. There is a danger. For many people, because of this high expectation, they may not contact us if they see things. They expect us to notice the interruptions, and we won't always. Even with the best monitoring of today, there are some things that can happen, some things that can be effective, which your monitoring won't know about. You need customers to tell you. So whilst this goes against the grain a little bit in terms of what I'm trying to tell you today, you still need to encourage your customers to report issues. Now, having said that, what you also need is a good mechanism to report to customers, web pages, phone messages and whatever, to make sure that they understand that what you do know about already, so they can report stuff that you don't know about. So have a web page that says, okay, we're doing maintenance on this today, we know about an issue which we're looking in on another system, and maybe if there are significant issues, then you have a message on your call center phone so that when people ring, they can hear exactly what the current issues are before they get the chance to go to hang on and get through to an agent to be helped. That will get rid of a lot of your calls in itself. It filters out. We tend to use that only when there's very significant issues going on, but we found it a very good mechanism for informing users when they are. We had an outage the other day with the network, which is unusual for us to have such a major one. We did, and we put a message on the phones so that when anybody contacted us, they knew, yes, we were on top of the issue. They knew roughly what timescale to expect us to fix it. and if not, when to call back to listen to the message again to get an update. And that worked extremely well. We also tweet, of course, and we refer to our status web page in just about everything we do. So when we send out emails, we say, do keep an eye on the status web page for anything that's going on, and then that helps reduce the calls. You know, if people can, look, a lot of people like looking at stuff online and don't want to make a phone call, don't want to send an email, so that helps considerably. Sometimes we have to be proactive and actually send out an email to everybody, and that also cuts down the number of calls. If you've got a really big issue, just push something out there, tweet it, email it, make sure everybody knows, and then they won't have to bother contacting us. Okay, so final slide, I think. Be a proactive service desk. I think that's the main message. Customers don't want to contact us. Design your systems so they don't have to. Get on top of your FAQs, try and reduce that FAQ list, get your whole team involved, start with your service desk, get everybody else in the IT department and even wider involved in trying to think creatively, trying to get rid of those FAQs. I have a personal mantra that the service desk people who really move on are the people in my team who have been very good at getting rid of those FAQs and helping improve our systems. They're not the people who are happy to sit there and just answer the FAQs. So that's another real incentive for your team, and it makes the job much more interesting. Make sure your services are resilient, and make sure that your monitoring keeps them resilient, and make sure that you're ahead of the game, and when things really do break, that you fix them as quickly as possible, hopefully before they're even reported to you. Try and identify what could be made more intuitive, more easily understood by the customers. Improve your documentation, change the way the user interface works, whatever is under your control that you can manage to do. Always with the aim of thinking, customers don't want to contact us. That's bad for the business. So, be like the water and electricity. Be used, be taken for granted. That's what your business expects of you these days. IT should be invisible as far as possible. Your team should always be thinking, how could we avoid the need for that customer to contact us? Thank you very much for listening. I hope that covers what you were expecting. Zoe.
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you, Jim. And thank you so much for that. Some really great tips there, I think, as well, and especially from somebody who's actually been through and done those things, and can say, yeah, this is how we did it. These were the challenges, and that it is actually achievable. Really interested as well in the point you made about proactive outgoing communications, because with looking at the title of this webinar, it can seem to be at first about kind of trying to reduce interaction almost, or reduce communication, and that's completely not the case. As you said, doing more outgoing proactive communications actually helps to reduce the calls people need to make, so I thought that was a really good point. The other thing you mentioned early on, new systems and looking for those ones that don't need the service desk to be involved as much. Do you have any examples of those? I know you mentioned the voice system, but anything else where the more kind of, developments in technology as such help?
Well, the most obvious one, which I'm guessing most people have done already, but I'm going to say it anyway, is the self-service forgotten password. If people have forgotten their username or password, they really shouldn't have to contact Service Desk to get that sorted. If you're still doing that, get an automated system.
Yeah, so that's a system thing, and because there's lots of sides to it, isn't there? Processes, systems, and you mentioned as well kind of getting that frame of mind embedded with the team. Is that something that you found challenging, or they responded well to?
Like everything, it takes time. It's getting the concepts across, but every new recruit you take in, once you've got that culture embedded, they soak that up, they try and get it. But you need to explain it to them. It's not something that's intuitive, it's not natural, it's not obvious. To me, as a manager now, having been in this job for many years, it seems the most natural thing in the world. But when you talk to developers, when you talk to operations, when you talk to other teams, it's not obvious at all. Some of them get it, but many won't. They don't realise. They just think the service desk is here to be used and abused.
And actually that brings us on nicely to we've had quite a few listeners' questions come in now actually, and the first one of those I can see from Temitopi, and he says that how do you communicate to management who rewards service desk analysts by the volume of calls recorded or resolved within an SLA, that this approach isn't the best approach and that they should review that basically? So
absolutely, yeah, it's the wrong incentive totally. It's challenging them to be less effective. I know that it feels like it's trying to make them work harder, and you can see why it was put in there, but it's the wrong incentive for them.
So I suppose some of the business proposal type work that you're talking about with perhaps forecasting what time could be saved if things were more done in a different way, proactive approach, as opposed to measuring the number of calls and actually trying to drive number of calls down. It's a bit of education, isn't it, really, to whoever that might be, stakeholder-wise?
Yeah, indeed. I mean, to give a concrete example again, going back to the forgotten password and username, we were in a situation many years ago where we didn't have a system to do that. I knew that the cost of development would be quite high. Looking at it just from the point of view of the reduction in cost to the service desk still didn't really quite make the equation work. When you add in, however, the reduction in interruption to the business of all of the thousands of students and staff that we have, and the fact that they don't want to contact us anyway, so you're providing a better service by doing so, that makes the business case work. Yeah,
it's pointing out those things, isn't it, really clearly?
Yeah. You have to be very... I used to sit around meetings and think, well, this is obvious, that is obvious, and I won't bother saying it. But I realised after a while that many things that are obvious to me are not obvious to other people who I thought they were obvious to. Most people sitting around the table in a meeting won't necessarily have those light bulb moments that you have. You need to explain in detail exactly what you're thinking. And hopefully, some of them will say, yeah, I agree with that, yeah, you're absolutely right, I was thinking the same. But you can bet your bottom dollar there's a few others who say, oh, that's new. I didn't realise that. Hang on a minute, let me think about that. Yeah, maybe you're right.
Yeah, and it's starting from the beginning and thinking, actually, have I explained what I'm trying to do here? And there's a few more listeners' questions. One from Sean, who's asking, customers like to think they have a helpful, high-performing service desk. So how do you drive customers to make more use of self-service options? I suppose it's a similar thing to within the team you were just talking about, but there's perhaps some different tips that could apply to customers and users rather than IT.
So how do you encourage people to use self-service? Okay.
Any
Can you
tips
think of a
or
particular thing?
So I suppose, you did talk earlier about tweeting and making sure that there's lots of those channels that to kind of keep reiterating the messages. I suppose keep reminding people that they can use self-service for certain things. And I know that's not, that's obviously still work for a service desk.
I think, I'm trying to think how we do it, and it is down to the way you communicate things. We have an IT services website which sets out exactly what services are available. We have a link there called service request forms, and we encourage people to go to that. All of our key self-service items are listed there. It's not an exclusive list, and we have links from elsewhere. We have induction programs for new staff and students to make sure to raise their awareness so they know exactly how to do particular things.
Yeah.
If somebody wants to use a service, they will come to our website, look at the documentation for it, and that documentation will lead them through how they use self-service to apply for that.
So making it really, really easy for them to do, partly, isn't it? And do you do anything like, I know some people in the end give deadlines as to, right, we're going to, we're not going to take calls about a certain request anymore, or we're going to turn, elements off. Did you do anything like that at all?
We certainly have, yeah. A number of our services, again, for students, they are expected to use the online forms, and if they ring up, they are told very politely, please use the online form, this is where it is.
Sort of enforcing it in a way.
Yes, absolutely. I'm trying to think, I'm sure there's a number of other things that we've done exactly the same for.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think how the trouble is you do these things over the years naturally, and you just take for granted. It's hard to remember.
That's a valid point as well, though, is that it takes time, and it's embedding it in the culture and the general ways of working, and it's kind of built up over time as well. Some of these things won't be instantly embedded or fixed, but it is possible to instill that.
The more you provide self-service, the greater your customers will have an expectation of self-service. If you don't do self-service now, it is going to be a struggle to move to a position where your customers are relying on it. The expectation for most users of commercial services of Amazon, Dropbox, all the big ones out there, it's all self-service, isn't it?
Yeah,
they take it for granted. The question doesn't even arise of doing anything other than self-service.
Yeah, I think you're right, actually, and I think sometimes we assume what the customers want in a work environment, but actually, sometimes if we thought about the consumer side, it's more obvious the way the way that's all going and the way people want things to be done. So someone's asked an interesting question here. You may refute, you may answer or not answer. It's up to you. Matthew's asking, how many telephone calls does your team actually take a day?
How many telephone calls?
Yeah.
I don't have the figures immediately at hand. It does vary considerably. No, I don't think I can put a hand. It's quite varying. This time of year, it's quite modest, and you hopefully won't have heard many calls in the background. Although I think there's a few going on.
Perhaps one or two. So it tends to be a kind of based around certain events and times in the year.
That's right. The beginning of term and during term is when our peak call volume is, and the same with the number of tickets. One of the key things with self-service is I made the decision many years ago that I've heard a number of people say that email is not a very efficient mechanism for dealing with a query. Now, there are exceptions to that. There are a number of cases where email is incredibly efficient and is the right way to go. But you've probably all seen ping-pong tickets where you get a question from the service desk that's answered by the customer, and you have this sort of game of tennis. They throw it back, and ping pong, and it goes on, and the ticket's got hundreds of updates in it, and you think, hang on a minute, a phone call would have been much quicker to sort that out. But for some things, particularly FAQs, there's a much better way, and that's putting a self-service mechanism in. That can be a simple web form. What that simple web form does is it asks the customer all of the questions that your service desk agent took 100 ping-pongs to do. And it captures them in a precise form that allows you to, in one hit, answer their query. So, yes, there is an interaction with service desk, but it's a very efficient interaction. So I didn't mention that because it's not quite eliminating calls, but that as a mechanism is very useful for reducing the number of interactions. And that's quite slightly different from the main agenda here, but is so closely related. I think perhaps I should have included it.
Of course, and it does, and we can never include everything in these webinar sessions, but as you say, there's a whole other host of things to, that people can look into, and that it's all connected up with the wider strategy, I suppose, and that's a point to make as well.
Yeah.
It should be kind of built within the strategy.
With our service desk tool, we use BNC footprints, and it allows other departments to easily come on board and use it. So it's not just for service desk, it's for, as I say, we're library and IT. Most of the library sections use it. That took a while to happen, and each new team that came on board, they had slightly different requirements in the way they wanted to use it. They might have their own contact email address for certain specialist services. And I would always be asking them, okay, hang on a minute, do you really want stuff to come in via email? Wouldn't it be better for this particular service, that particular service, that you had a web form where customers can just fill it in? And quite often when you get a web form and you look at it, you think, hang on a minute, although we used to do this via a ticket coming to service desk, couldn't we automate that last mile? Couldn't we make it just happen? A bit of code to actually do whatever it was that needed doing. And sometimes that is the case. You can fully automate it.
Yeah, and I mean it links in with this. I'll read out this other listener question we've got here. Where is it now? So it's basically, so Sean again is asking, with a particular, when you get lots of people struggling with a particular process or system, how do you bring those issues to the system analysts or developers to get those fixed?
How do I do that? That's good. A number of mechanisms, but usually I will walk round to the office of the line manager or the particular specialist developer staff and run it by them. Initially I'll say, look, have you got 5 minutes just to have a quick heads up about this, and just bounce some ideas, and we'll have a quick discuss to see what's viable and what's not, and we'll place it. Is it something that's expensive to do? Is it something that's cheap to do? Is it something that looks absolutely impossible to do? Just get a ballpark for where you're going with it, and that works very well. I have a reputation as a service desk manager for walking into a room. You can probably imagine everybody goes, oh no, must be, which system's down today, Jim? By doing this proactive bit and having other conversations with them, they're now less scared of me coming in the room. They see me as a friend working with them, and I think that relationship building is very important.
Definitely, yeah. That's something that comes up time and time again, in webinars on all different topics, is that kind of relationship, and that being seen as a value add service, basically, not just the firefighters or the kind of the problem problem people.
I'm just going to add, I'm aware that I wasn't able to answer the number of calls question. I don't want to feel that I'm ducking that question. But if anybody wants to send an email to me, or if you want to pass on that the contact details, I'm very happy to look that up on my figures and give you a more accurate idea of what happens here.
Okay, so shall we say then?
I'm happy for you to share my email address also, if you wish.
What I will do, actually, Jim, if it's okay, is I'll ask everyone listening if they have a specific question to either post it during this session while the webinar is still open, and I'll pass that along, or they can also reply to their invite email that goes straight to me, and I'll kind of collect anything relevant up and send it on to you, Jim, if that's okay.
That's cool. Yeah, absolutely.
Excellent. Okay, well in that case let's go for one more listener's question whilst we've got time, and then we'll wrap it up after that. So this is Simon, and he's asking, having reduced incoming calls, would you take on more second line work and absorb extra tasks, or do you still find that the work takes a similar amount of time, just comes in via different channels?
Yes, we do. We have a process that we've gone through quite a lot of the ITIL processes over the years, and one of the key ones was service transition. Now, the selling point for service transition was to enable our developers to free themselves up from supporting services and push it over to our operations and service desk teams. So operations should always be stealing work from the developers. Structured transition cleanly. Developers get on work with developing. Operations deal with the live services. In the same way, IT service desk are stealing jobs, stealing work from the operations team so that they can deal with customer queries much more quickly. There's less punting of tickets onto another team, and that makes the job more interesting. It makes the whole process more efficient. So absolutely, where there's room to be able to do that, freed up by reducing the call volume, you can help other teams, and that has a knock-on effect. That other team then can do stuff, and our operations team actually now gets involved in quite a lot of development work. So they're stealing from the developers, and the developers then have got more time to do development work. And the most important work in the department really is that development work. That has huge value.
Yeah. And can be a big part of that initial proposal, if you like, an explanation as to why this is also so valuable. Yeah.
So nobody loses their job. Everybody gets a more interesting job. The business benefits all round, and the status of service desk is elevated as a result of all of this. Great kudos to everybody. Everybody wins out of it. Why would you not want to do it?
Yeah, exactly that. Exactly. Well, that's a fantastic note to leave it on. And thank you so much, Jim, for your insight today. There's been some really great practical tips there, and we can, there's so much we could learn from what you guys have done there by the sounds of it. We will have to leave it there for today, I'm afraid. So just left to also thank our sponsors of today's webinar, Manage Engine. And thank you to everybody listening and for all your brilliant questions. As I say, anything that comes in as a direct kind of question for Jim that we've not been able to answer, I will pass those along. And thanks again, Jim, for your presentation today.
Thank you for your help, Zoe. That's fantastic. And thank you all, everybody, for listening and for your wonderful questions.
Brilliant. Okay. Goodbye, Jim. Thanks again.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.